Afternoon, everyone. I am Jen Kuzmic. I'm the executive director of the festival. And it was by design that the very first speaker we invited to the Banff stage this year is the CEO of Tubi, Anjali Sud. Truly. Under her leadership, Tubi has reached 97 million monthly active viewers. It is probably on the rise as we speak. She has been named top 40 under 40 by Fortune magazine, and she is one of the most influential women in the entertainment business. Just last year, Tubi has seen meteoric rise. They have been championing diversity in their programming, and this is going to be an incredible conversation. So pleased that this could take place on our Banff stage. Before I turn things over to the amazing Elaine, writer for The Ankler, let's have a quick look at Tubi.
Tubi.
Only on Tubi.
Tubi is absolutely sizzling right now.
Tubi will be streaming the Super Bowl for free.
I feel so validated right now.
Tubi is that girl right now.
This is where you want to be.
Maybe they just want to have a little fun.
Oh my God!
Big smiles!
So big. This is huge.
You better get used to saying that.
Big boot to the face.
I just must be tougher and stronger than you.
Tubi stands for something different because we're in a moment that demands it. Tubi is the home for the next generation of Hollywood talent.
The way the first movie connected with fans was wild.
So what's next?
All right.
Nothing like a good sizzle.
Tubi is that girl right now. That is a great quote. It's an exciting time to be in the fast space, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the right time to be in the space of free premium entertainment. We see it's not just younger generations that are gravitating towards that medium. It's all generations, and people want great storytelling, but they don't want to pay, and that's because they're otherwise being entertained on TikTok. And so I think Tubi has tried to be bold. We've tried to kind of skate where the puck is going, to use a hockey reference because we're in Canada. And it is working, and it's our job to execute better and continue to prove that model.
Now, you've been CEO going on 2 years now, and in many ways it seems like a natural segue for your career. You've spent time in leadership posts at Time Warner, at Amazon, and you were at Vimeo for a number of years, where you were CEO since 2017. Tell us about your path to Tubi.
So I spent nearly a decade at Vimeo, which is an online video platform focused on creators, so the people behind the camera. And our mission was really to lower the barriers to quality storytelling, to help creators produce their content and reach their audience. And we were really focused on the long tail, the independent filmmakers, the people who had stories, long-form stories they wanted to tell. And I think one of the things that I learned from that time is we were able to help those creators with tools and software and technology, but the single biggest hurdle for them was finding an audience. Still incredibly hard. And the reason is because traditionally in Hollywood, programming can be monolithic. We program for the monoculture. We try and find a show that speaks to everybody. And so it is one of the reasons why I was really excited to come to Tubi, is that Tubi's model being 100% free for consumers, having the largest premium collection of movies and TV series, what I was seeing was that we were actually pretty good at helping stories find their audience. any kind of story. And that's one of the reasons why I was excited to be here, is to help kind of those storytellers find their audience, and then to bring more diversity to storytelling, because I do think that's what audiences will demand in the future.
And you mentioned a little bit about the learnings you brought from Vimeo to Tubi. Now, Vimeo was sub-based and Tubi is free, ad-supported. What kind of learnings do you take from a sub environment to an ad-based environment?
Well, I think anyone who's run a subscription business knows it's all about retention. It's about building relationships with your customers and keeping them engaged. And I think that's equally important in a free ad-supported business. But I will also say, business models matter. They change incentives. They change what you invest in. And I do think a free ad-supported is the future for entertainment. As I said, I think it's just because the alternatives for consumers are increasingly going to be free. And so, you're going to just see more and more, again, especially younger audiences, like they're just not going to want to pull out a credit card. And so what I have found to be true at Tubi is, because we're ad-supported, we only make money from ads, which means we only make money if someone is watching, which means all we care about and obsess about is engagement, and not just engagement, but quality of engagement. Are you leaned in? Are you engaged in the storytelling? And I think, that's why we've done things like we're almost entirely on demand. So we don't actually, most of our viewing isn't linear channels where people are turning on the television and watching in the background. Those things make a difference to the quality of the engagement and the business model. So, I think for us, the purity of being 100% free, not having tiers, not having anything else to think about, allows us to focus. And that focus is powerful because we can be really, really, really good at this one thing. And if you look at all the scale we've had in our audience and in our business so far, it's all from that focus, and there's plenty more room to grow.
Well, tell us a little bit more about that on-demand model, because there are other fast players that have sort of like programming, where the idea is that you tune in and it's ambient programming, you leave it on in the background when you're doing laundry or something. Why not also have that as an option? Why focus on demand?
And we do offer live TV. We have an EPG. We do have that, but we don't view that as a differentiator. We view that as table stakes. The differentiator for us comes from, I think, two key areas. One is just having a breadth of storytelling that we can personalize to you. So we have, 175,000 titles in Canada. It's the largest premium collection here. Same in the US. And we spend a lot of time getting really good at helping you discover content. The other thing we do, which is very unique and fast, is originals. So Tubi has hundreds of originals. You saw some of the examples in that sizzle, and 1 in 4 of our viewers watches a Tubi original. So we are actually very focused on exclusive, differentiated programming. What you're gonna see from us, Elaine, is you're gonna see us double down there and actually focus more on Gen Z content for young adult audiences that reflects culture, that reflects the talent that they're used to seeing in a digital world. You're gonna see us look to leverage creators more in our offering. And so in some ways, it's sort of like a free Netflix model because it is really premium original programming, but that's offered entirely for free.
Well, let's talk about some of those originals. What genres are resonating? What have you found from about 300 or so originals that you've released so far?
Yeah, so it's been nearly 400 now, and I would say I'd almost put it in 2 buckets. One is just very specific genres and fandoms where you can see that there are groups and communities that just maybe are underserved by the traditional Hollywood system. So some of that will be anything from horror, thriller, true crime content. Some of it is, Black cinema, Black entertainment is an incredibly popular part of Tubi's offering that we're really proud to support. And so it's really more of this idea of people have diverse tastes and interests, and they want to go deep and they want to feel seen by the programming. And how can we help them do that? The other, I think, is what we would say is like the culturally resonant programming, where we're really trying to find stories that are kind of at the speed of culture, at the speed of TikTok, and we're trying to bring those stories to our audience in Hollywood quality content. So a great example is, you probably saw a lot of Noah Beck on that sizzle. He's a TikTok influencer. We paired him with a Wattpad novel to do a film called Sidelined. It's the #1 title on Tubi in our history. 15 million viewers. Almost all of the marketing was from fans on social media, viral memes that got nearly 2 billion views online. And that's just a really good example of just trying to kind of take what's happening in other mediums and in social and bring that into Hollywood in a way that speaks to the younger audience. So those are some of the examples of the types of things that we'll do. And we're pretty flexible in terms of what is going to be good. We don't start with a philosophical view of like, we know what quality looks like. We are not the arbiters of quality, our audiences. And we listen to what they want and we give them more of that. And it sounds stupidly simple, but I will tell you what we at least hear from audiences is that it's refreshingly unique.
And this is a space that moves very quickly. In your time at Tubi, how has your programming strategy evolved over this time?
It's evolved a lot. We move pretty fast. We like to try and stay as entrepreneurial and startup-y as we can, even as we scale. But I think you will have seen in the last couple of years, we've definitely, sort of continued to invest in originals, more premium originals. And as I said, try and focus more on younger audiences. We've done a lot of stuff around sports culture. We streamed the Super Bowl, as you saw, produced a red carpet show for that, done docuseries. And then, more recently in the last year, we've experimented more with creators. So a year ago, we launched the first fan-fueled studio in streaming, where anybody can pitch an idea for greenlight, and we will greenlight and fund projects, films, TV series based on fan feedback. And we have our first slate of about 5 projects that are coming out and rolling out right now. You are going to see in the coming months us expand those initiatives and continue to do some interesting things in the creator space. So I think those are all examples of some of the things that we're doing. And by the way, we're also growing our content investment with Hollywood's licensing studio content and continuing to give people more. So at a time when I think a lot of other players are having to kind of pare back, you will see Tubi just continue to invest because we are seeing the strength and momentum.
And where do you see the balance of originals versus licensed content, and what are some of the metrics you're looking at to figure out where you're getting the best value?
I think it is very much a sort of symbiotic ecosystem. The originals are important for us for a couple of reasons. One, differentiation. But 2, as I said, it's usually because we're listening to what audiences want more of. And for whatever reason, we can't find it in traditional Hollywood. We will just go and make that content. But otherwise, we're very happy to continue. We have an incredibly vast and diverse network that has been built over the years. Adam Lewinson, who's our chief content officer, is sitting in the audience today. He spent years building this network with independent distributors, studios, and it's working. We want to work with everyone in the industry. We don't see it as a mutually exclusive, sort of or. This is an and. This is how do we continue to give people more of everything, because again, audiences are fickle, and the competition and battle for their attention is fierce, and it's only getting fiercer. So I think for us, it's all about bringing all these pieces to play. And, it's probably the least sexy thing to talk about, but technology and data is incredibly important. We are very good at taking lots and lots of content and data and helping each individual viewer have a personalized experience. And we do actually invest a lot in machine learning, in AI, and just being really, really good at that. We obsess about that because it's also an important part of our offering.
And I mean, AI is such a topic of conversation in any conversation around the media or entertainment right now. You mentioned it. Tell us a little bit about how you're utilizing it, where you're finding the most applications for AI.
Yeah, so I think for Tubi right now, the primary place we're super excited about that we've seen the most sort of opportunity has actually just been in the user experience of discovery. So, I think AI, the next generation of deep learning models are going to enable things that were previously very hard. So I'll give you an example. Like if you ask most consumers today, nobody can actually remember. They know what show they watched, but they can't remember what streaming service they watched it on. Why? Because they all look and feel the same. It's like a grid, and you scroll through the grid. And it's been very hard to innovate in the user experience. Well, now with machine learning, you can literally, you are gonna start to see home screens look totally different based on the person, and they will be optimized and dynamic like that. So these are the types of areas where we always start with the viewer experience. How can we use technology to give our viewers a better experience? And I actually think the possibilities with AI are enormous. Of course, there's Gen AI and the things that can open up as well. I think we're more sort of watching and kind of seeing what's happening, and we'll look to, again, when we think we can help make it a win-win for the industry, we'll look to do that.
Interesting. So, speaking of Gen AI, then, so at what point do you feel like it could be helpful for the development of a original program, or in the actual creation of that?
Well, I saw this at Vimeo for sure, and it's true. I think the biggest potential for Gen AI is to accelerate creativity by making it easier, faster, and cheaper to create content, right? And ultimately, if utilized well, that is the potential. Because it is extremely hard to make great content. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of time, and I'm optimistic. I think that there is a way that we will actually have more storytellers able to get their stories out there. We will be able to actually raise the bar on quality while enabling more people to participate. So I'm sort of in the camp that thinks that there is a really positive potential here. And I think Tubi will look to play a role in that where we can.
And, speaking of the number of monthly active users you have, you're nearing 100 million a month now, and that's up from about 78 million year over year. That's a significant amount of growth. What do you think accounts for that growth? What's been really driving that since 2024?
Well, I think we've definitely seen growth among younger audiences, multicultural audiences. But I also think part of it is the macroeconomic environment. As I said, if you look at the industry right now, for many other platforms, prices are being raised for consumers. Ad tiers are being added that are paid, so where consumers are paying to watch ads. Ad loads are high, heavy ad loads. Ads aren't personalized. There's a lot around the experience that I would say there's just been more friction. And then also, if you look at content, sports rights in particular, fragmentation. So I think that what we're seeing is that when you have a very simple, frictionless, easy model, and you keep investing in your product, you keep investing in content, you keep trying to get better and better, consumers are just rewarding us. And so the growth is, we're seeing it across markets. We are seeing it across demos. And one of the interesting things is that we see a lot of a lack of overlap. So what we'll find is that I think in Canada, for example, 80% of Tubi viewers, 1 in 3 Canadians are watching Tubi, but 80% are not watching on other free services. So we're able to kind of reach into, I think, groups of audiences that just otherwise aren't on streaming. Again, they're probably being entertained in other ways, and our value proposition is resonating.
Tell me how you view and what you view as your main competitors. I mean, it's Reed Hastings once famously said that Netflix's main competitor was sleep, right? But it's Tubi, when you're looking at these young audiences, you're looking at social media, like TikTok, Instagram, and all of that, in addition to your Netflixes and your HBO Maxes. How do you approach those different markets? And are you approaching those competitors in different ways?
Yeah, well, I'll say, we try not to define our strategy by what our competition is doing, but we are acutely aware of what their next best alternative is to be entertained. And I do think, as I said, I think we're in an attention economy. I think social media is a competitor for Tubi. I also look at YouTube. I think YouTube is a really good example where we talk a lot about Netflix, and Netflix has built an incredible business. But also, if you look at TV viewing and time spent, even on like your, the big TV.
It's all on YouTube.
It's YouTube. And I remember years ago, none of us thought that like we would all be sitting there, turning on your television and watching YouTube. And yet here we are. And the reason I think that they are an important sort of model to look at is because their cost to produce content is zero. And they have a flywheel, and the scale, it just goes faster and faster. And I think what hopefully Tubi is going to be able to do is demonstrate that we can build a similar business, but for long form, sort of Hollywood produced content, because we do have a long tail business. And we do have, we have independent filmmakers who have self-funded projects that will put their stories on Tubi and organically get millions of views. And so I think we still have obviously a lot of work to do to get to a scale like that, but I do think there's a white space there in the market for sort of free premium entertainment, and that's the space, especially for the next generation, and that's the space that we're trying to just be the best at.
And I want to talk a little bit more about indie filmmakers and creators in a bit, but going back to the fact that the market is so fragmented, how are people discovering Tubi? How are you thinking about investing in customer acquisition? How are you going about it?
Yeah, so Tubi was pretty early, I think, in integrating and partnering with all of the TV operating systems. So like we've always taken we want to meet audiences where they are, and we want to be ubiquitous. That means if you want to discover and watch on your phone or your laptop or anywhere in your living room, whether it's a Roku device, an Amazon device, an LG device, a Vizio device, a headset, a VR headset, like we want to be everywhere. And we've actually put a lot of effort into working with those partners. And I think what's been really remarkable is rather than having a transactional relationship, we will actually staff as teams that will go and like A/B test the experience with our partners and help improve it. So Amazon is a great example. They're a great partner of ours while also being a competitor. And we've actually helped sort of the Amazon team optimize their live TV tab because of tests that we'll run with them. So I do think there's sort of you have to recognize sort of in the ecosystem where you are and then find ways to add value that has worked for us. We also get a lot of organic and word of mouth traction. Social, as I mentioned, the more that we've invested in stories that reflect sort of YA audiences, we actually see a lot of our new viewers are coming from social media. And it's interesting, we spend a lot of time on social media. Our marketing team is they're deep in the Reddit threads. And we we listen to our audience, we also listen to what's happening in culture. And we will, I think our team has done things like we'll see fans on in a very, what one might think is niche community. A good example is Winona Earp, which was featured here. It's a Canadian Western thriller. It's like the Earpers are so passionate. And
I didn't realize that's what they call themselves.
They're Earpers. And they had a show. There was a show that was canceled on television, and so we commissioned a special, and we turned that around really fast. And so we will do things like that, it's a really incredible way to build an organic brand and to also serve fandoms. And ultimately, it's marketing, right? It is how we acquire those viewers. And then the good news is we have such a wonderfully large catalog that once you try Tubi, we've got something for you to hopefully keep engaging you.
And speaking of which, Sony's Keith Legoy was up here earlier talking about the importance of having programming that penetrates the cultural zeitgeist. Tell me how you're thinking about that.
I think for us, some of it is about, I think, speed. The reason that TikTok is so great for a lot of people, by the way, most of us also hate doom scrolling on social media, right? It's a love-hate relationship. But the thing that's great about it is it feels like it's reflecting culture in real time. Right? It's you know what's happening. I think what we're very interested in is how do we, bridge the sort of how do you bring that into long form without a 2-year, 3-year kind of delay. And that's where you'll see, we just announced a new YA slate. It's featuring, influencers and talent. You saw some of them, Chase Hudson Asher Angel, Sochi Gomez. You all may not know those names, but I guarantee your kids do. And we're really trying to work with sort of the next generation of Hollywood talent, and we think that a lot of that talent, they are the ones who are connecting with fans organically on social. So I think that's sort of the lens that we've seen work at Tubi that we're looking to scale. And then I think the other side is like, how do we start working with creators more and actually bring them to Hollywood and give them more pathways to kind of get into the ecosystem?
And let's talk about that. The initiative is called Stubios. And like you said, it's a fan-fueled studio. It's for aspiring filmmakers and their fans. So is this for people who are, pretty much outside of the legacy TV and film system? What kind of creators are you looking at? How are you sort of training them and funding their opportunity?
Yeah, so I think in general in this space, we are experimenting. So I wouldn't say anything is set in stone because we have to kind of see how it works and see how it resonates. But the sort of general premise for us is we're looking for digitally native creators who want to go into long-form storytelling, but maybe historically haven't been able to. And we're actually pairing them with mentorship. So Issa Rae, who is, sort of the OG, she started on YouTube and transitioned to Hollywood, is one of the mentors for the program. And we're really trying to help those folks kind of make that transition. But we're also looking for diverse stories and unique stories and, sort of angles that you wouldn't normally see. And so I think that's sort of the model that is interesting. It's also worth noting you will see from us in the coming months, you will see us actually expand and be more aggressive in this area, and we'll kind of use Studios, but as a launching pad to some other things. But generally, what we want to be able to do is help creators graduate into Hollywood. So this isn't meant to be, let's just like take a bunch of short form content that's doing well in one medium and like throw it on Tubi and have it replace Hollywood storytelling. Like that's not interesting, and we don't think that that's what will work with our audience. What we're really trying to do is just be better at helping sort of discover those folks. And if you think about what's happened in sort of the industry, I mean, you have Mr. Beast and Miss Rachel, but those are like the very tippy top of sort of creators. They're extremely expensive.
And that's a big investment, right?
It's
like
incredibly
for Amazon,
big.
That's $100 million investment in Mr. Beast. And, Miss Rachel, the interesting thing about that is that content is, you can find that elsewhere, but is now also on Netflix and doing very well on Netflix.
Yeah, but I think that probably makes a ton of sense for their models. When you're a free ad-supported model, like that's not gonna work. And I think what is so interesting, and this is where, I spent a decade at Vimeo, also was competing with YouTube for a decade, is like, I do think this is the area of opportunity that has not yet been cracked, which is how do you actually help long tail creators who are either already making long form content or are very interested in becoming great at long form content. How do you help them? They have an audience online, but not in sort of a streaming environment. How do we give them access the same way we have for independent filmmakers in our regular business? I think that is, to me, that is like a super exciting opportunity. It's a space that Tubi can own. It's great for creators. It's great for audiences. And so, you'll see more from us here. And we will be very, we will experiment. We will try some things. We'll be a little fearless about it because I just think it's not obvious what will work. But the guiding principle will be, what does our audience want? And how do we give them more of it?
Let's talk about the Super Bowl. So, sports is very reliable, right, for our advertisers. That's why we saw sports pretty much dominate the upfronts this year and for so many of the past couple of years. Tubi had, 15.5 million peak concurrent streaming viewers watching the Super Bowl this year. Tell me how that's informed your thinking about future sports programming.
Well, so I'm sure like everybody else, premium live sports rights are, that's like the holy grail. It's also really expensive. And
a lot of them locked up already.
Yeah, and they're locked up for years. And so I think the sort of approach we've taken is how can Tubi sit at the intersection of sports and culture? And how can we actually widen the audience by bringing in the non-diehard sports fan? So with the Super Bowl, our sort of pitch was, think of us as a marketing vehicle for the NFL, for Fox, how we are going to do everything we can to actually bring in younger audiences, female audiences. That's why we programmed, a red carpet with fashion and celebrity. And what we found was we had 24 million visitors on game day. 40% were ages 18 to 34. Half were women. We were out there, we weren't doing traditional marketing. We were doing influencer marketing on TikTok. We I think, did demonstrate that we can actually expand the pie. And I think what you'll see us look to do is just continue to do more sports cultural programming and really look to demonstrate that value, because ultimately, if you are a league, you're thinking about how to monetize not just right now, but in the future, and you've got to reach that audience. And you've got to recognize that that audience is a little bit different. Some of this research and stats on Gen Z is really interesting. Often they're more interested in the stories behind athletes than they are in the live game.
So does that translate to more shoulder programming in the way of like a sports docuseries or behind the scenes stuff?
Yeah, I think you'll see us do more of that. We announced for the World Cup, for example, we are doing a docu-follow series that we'll be sharing more about. And you will see more shoulder programming from us. It will be oriented, though, I think, more and more to younger audiences. So I think it will have its unique Tubi kind of spin. But yeah, I think that's a huge area of opportunity. And again, we feel like we're uniquely positioned to do that. And, I think being owned by Fox and having access to Fox Sports and some of the incredible kind of sports that they have makes us sort of uniquely positioned to do things like that.
And let's talk about international expansion. So Tubi operates in the US, Canada, Mexico, Latin America, the UK, and Australia. What have you seen in the regions outside of North America that you're looking to, sort of double down on? What other regions are you looking at to expand into?
So we're actually not trying to add more regions. We're pretty thoughtful about, what we want to do is we want to have a right to win in the regions that we're in, and we want to be the very best we can be. And so I think what you're actually going to see from us is you're just going to see us look to invest more in Canada, in Mexico, in the UK, in sort of the regions that we're in, and really just try and build like sort of a really winning proposition. And I mean, Canada's a great example. What has surprised me is, of course, there's local interests and local tastes, but the model has resonated the exact same way. Free, premium entertainment, large library, originals, a frictionless, easy experience. For the most part, those are global sort of problems to solve, and we are seeing a lot of similarities in how we can go into markets. There are obviously nuances, and a lot of it, I would say, depends on what the free alternatives are. So like the UK is a good example of a market where there's actually a lot of free services out there. So in a market like that, it's really important that we have exclusive original programming that stands out. But I would say generally, like the model and the approach it's kind of the same. It's like offer a great experience, listen, give that audience more of what they want. It sounds simple, but it seems to be working really well, and we see really strong growth in all the markets that we're in.
And with so many younger people, pretty much some of them almost exclusively getting content from their phones, whether it's Netflix or TikTok or whatever. Like, how are you thinking about like the mobile first audience versus those who traditionally are going to log into a TV?
I think our general view is, we want mobile to feel like effortless entertainment, because again, that is the device where you expect like no barriers. But what we're actually seeing and are probably most interested in is how mobile becomes a companion or a part of your viewing journey. So if you just think about your day, like, you're starting the day and you're not like turning on your television and watching a show, you're on your phone, you're on your commute. Maybe you see something on social, you see a clip, you start to watch it, and then you maybe catch like the first 20 minutes of an episode on your way home, and then you want to come home and unwind and watch on your television. So I think it's more, how do we offer across device a really seamless, smart experience so that we know what you've been doing enough to give you that feeling, and that you're getting sort of the same quality and level of experience no matter where you are. I think that's what you'll see. But for example, on mobile, like, we launched a scenes product, which is basically like a TikTok-like scrolling experience where you can just get scenes of movies, and you will see us like sort of think about the UX on mobile and just try and come up with ways to make discovery more fun and interesting for that form factor.
And what are the major challenges you think exist? I mean, not just for the entertainment space, but for the FAST space in particular.
I think in the entertainment space, I mean, it's differentiation. I do think we are. It's sort of a sea of sameness sometimes, it feels like. And everybody's licensing from everybody else, and and the rights are very fragmented, and it just and like I said, if you look at most consumers, they can't remember whether they saw something on one or another, and so that's got to be a wake-up call for us. We have to have brands that stand for something. We have to have a position that stands for something in the minds of consumers, and we have to do that while consumer attention spans are going down and people are even more fickle. And I think this is the biggest challenge, and I think it's exacerbated for younger audiences. So, it's standing out, and that's really hard. And that's where I think you have to have a little bit of a disruptor mentality. You have to be willing to try things that might not work, like streaming the Super Bowl. That was risky for us. We didn't know if we could pull that off. And I think but you have to do those things. You have to try to bring creators into Hollywood. You have to take risks on the kind of original programming you do. So I think that's the hardest part, and I think it's really hard in a traditional media ecosystem when there's so much pressure and so many constraints and so much sort of structural headwinds.
And I want to open it up to, we'll have time for 2 or 3 questions at the end of this, but I want to talk about your commencement speech at Pace University, which you gave just a few days ago. You said to, quote, "surround yourself with optimists." And you said that if you look across every technologist or entrepreneur or innovator you admire, you'll find that they have this trait in common. And certainly the media and entertainment industry is one that could use some optimism right now. So tell us what you're optimistic about.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's what I would say. If Tubi can be a model for anything, it's that if we just put viewers first, remember our customer, put viewers first, you can make even a model that most people thought was ridiculous a couple of years ago. People made a lot of fun of Tubi. Still people do on social media, but if we put viewers first, they want premium storytelling. The younger generation, they say they want more originals. They say they want things that feel, beautifully produced and artfully told. So there's no I would say barrier like that. It's more how we navigate through it. And I do think if you can be an innovator and a disruptor, even if you're in a legacy media company. I think Tubi is a great example. It's a startup that was acquired 5 years ago and has thrived in a large media company. So I think we just have to not let the sort of, doom and gloom sometimes kind of let us forget that we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to be bold and to create that future. And there's nobody better positioned than the folks who've spent their careers in this industry to do it. But it takes, we have to be brave.
This is a great time to open it up, a great note to end on there, and open it up to some questions. There should be a microphone going around. If anybody's got a question, just raise your hand. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for that, I think it's so interesting to hear that young people are clamoring for more originals. You know, we hit this point in 2022, peak TV, right? 600 scripted series on the air. And, you know, there's been a contraction over the last few years, but, you know, you're finding that there's still demand for original.
I think there is. What we see is that young people, they prefer originals. They want to see more diverse stories and cast. They want to see work. They care about whether it's an independent creator or independent filmmaker. They care who's making the content. Also, the thing to remember for all of us is like what we see as nostalgia for young audiences is new. We call it nostalgia, right? Like I watched Gossip Girl reruns and I'm like, oh my gosh, this brings me back to my 20s.
They're like, check out this new show.
And they're like, look at this like new concept. So I also think we can't forget, like if it's great storytelling, you have a whole new generation of people who can discover it. But again, the model and the way that they discover matters. I do think I think it's more about, it has to be free, it has to be easy for them to discover. And I think if you do that, there's a lot of room for them to discover the content.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. I wonder how many people, how many younger people discovered Gossip Girl through like watching a TikTok clip of it or something.
I would bet many. I would bet many.
All right, we have any questions? Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I have two questions. First of all, you were talking about originals. Can you give us an idea of the length of the originals that you're looking at? And number two, their budgets.
Great question.
And I guess for Canadians, you know, maybe you'll tell us, you know, what percentage of the budget Tubi is prepared to put up.
Okay. All of our originals are traditional lengths, so feature film or scripted, unscripted TV series lengths. There's no, we are a traditional premium sort of entertainment platform. Our budgets are, I think it depends on who you talk to. Some people would say our budgets are smaller than others. I think our view would be that because a lot of the stories that we're focused on are ones that aren't otherwise being told in Hollywood, that they're actually really premium budgets. I'm not giving you a number, obviously, because.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, if it's helpful, the range of our budgets are significant. So, we did a show that premiered after the Super Bowl called The Z-Suite, produced in Canada. That would be the type of thing that you would expect from a Hollywood budget. We also, as I said, have independent filmmakers who will be making content for a fraction of the budget. And I think the most important thing for us is we just don't see budget as a predictor of true quality, because quality is what our audiences want. And that can be controversial, I appreciate, but it is what has propelled Tubi's growth. And then in terms of what's produced in Canada, Adam can confirm, but actually I think a substantial percentage of our originals are produced in Canada. We love doing work here, and it's not just because my husband's Canadian and I'm from Michigan, which is aspirationally Canada. Anyways, we have had just a really incredible experience and track record here. So we are growing our content investment. And we do expect to grow that in Canada.
Well, I suspect that a good portion of the reasons why you're producing so much in Canada is because of the costs in Canada. So clearly budgets must matter to you, no?
Absolutely. Listen, I think, of course they matter. They matter for everybody. And I think the more that the Canadian market positions itself to be cost-effective, flexible, partner really well, the better. I think it's a smart way to approach sort of the environment that we're in.
All right, great question. Anybody else? Over there.
Hi, I was wondering, since you're aiming to a younger audience, what part of your business case, with the ad-supported, the type of, clients that you want to bring in to present that type of programming for a Gen Z generation, the ad that you have on the platform, are they picked for that audience as well?
Oh, it's a great question. Not yet, but I think increasingly you should see us being better at the same way we personalize the experience of the content that you watch. How can we better personalize the ads? You know, Tubi has historically, our audience has always come before the ad dollars, you know? In fact, I think there was a period of time where we had a lot of work to do to get advertisers and brands to really understand our value. I'm really pleased to say, I think we've really kind of crossed that obstacle. I mean, you know, we've had really strong upfronts. I think we just shared we crossed $1 billion in ad revenue in the last year, and we're growing faster at a time when the market is really competitive. And the reason is because what we're finding is brands are basically looking to reach audiences they can't find anywhere else. And because we're so strong with these sort of the folks who aren't subscribed to cable, because we're so strong with younger audiences, if you're a big brand, you can't reach them on a paid streaming service, so your only other option is social media, and that's not brand safe. You have just a couple seconds to get your message across. So that sort of value proposition of giving brands access to this generation in an engaged way that's brand safe is resonating. And we have welcomed many more new brands to advertise on Tubi, and the momentum is really strong. So I'm optimistic that you will see sort of more personalization in ads. And this is another area where AI and Gen AI can make a big difference, because a lot, you know, one of the things we did recently is we launched a self-serve ad platform with Comcast, where small businesses and medium-sized brands can actually start to advertise on Tubi. And if you look at, for them, the biggest obstacle has been, how do you produce an ad at a certain quality, right? It used to cost millions of dollars to produce, you know, sort of an ad. And I think we're seeing that also get democratized. So yeah, I think, you know, in the future, we should all have really amazing personalized ad experiences just the way we do on social media. There's no reason that streaming can't become like that.
I think we have time for one more question if anyone else has one. All right, but if not, then I want to hear, what's the one thing you're most excited about on your slate? Why don't you close us out with that?
Ooh, I'm not a big adult animation person, but we have an adult animated series called Breaking Bear coming out.
With Brendan Fraser?
Yeah, it's got Sarah Michelle Gellar, Josh Gad, Brendan Fraser, Elizabeth Hurley. But it's not, I mean, they're amazing, but it's just the premise, I think, is like super edgy and cool. And it's basically like, think like Breaking Bad meets like bears. I'll leave it at that, and hopefully that piques your interest. But I just think it's really edgy and unique, and again reflects sort of the brand and where we want to take it.
Okay, and Breaking Bears premieres when?
When does it premiere? I don't actually know.
Okay.
Oh, we haven't announced it yet.
All
Good
right.
thing I didn't throw out a
Well, feel
date
free
there.
to break that
Okay.
news here today
Yeah.
if you like, but otherwise, thank you so much for your insights, Anjali. It was wonderful. Please give it up for Anjali
Thank you
Sud.
guys. Thank you, Elaine.